Hey everybody, I'm Robert. I would like to welcome you back to the channel and welcome to a new setting. This is Mandryl, which is a cocktail bar that we have in Ramstein. And it's closed right now due to COVID, so it actually gives us the opportunity to sit down and use a new location, I guess you would say. Tonight I am drinking a Negroni, but it's a special Negroni. It's basically it has Campari, which is infused with coffee, and it's got Amalfi gin, which has been infused with vanilla, and then an antique recipe vermouth, which all mixes together quite nicely. The reason I like this with the vanilla infusion and the coffee infusion is it takes away some of the sweetness that I would say I like less about the typical Campari. My brother Sid and I, we went on, actually with Misha and Tom and Fabi and a bunch of guys, we went on a Campari or a Negroni testing tour around Italy, or around our area in Italy, and we went to a place called Hotel Porta Rocca, and they did a Negroni that was quite similar to this, but they actually had the coffee bean in, and they put the vanilla in, and we really liked it. So Sid, being, as far as I'm concerned, a world-class bartender, came back and started playing with different infusions and different things and came up with this. It's actually really good. But you guys are going to ask it, so I'll tell you a little bit about this cocktail bar. We do really anything and everything. We have a very small cocktail menu because most of the stuff that we do down here is on the fly. It's based on mixing different things and making cool creations out of it. And with that, we also have, I think, about 60 different whiskeys, and then we have 50 different gins, lots of tequilas, lots of different things like that, because we really do enjoy the different flavors that come out of all of the different types of cocktails. So why don't we get to the topic today? It's an interesting one because we're sitting here pushing 50,000 subscribers, something a lot of you guys have reminded me. And I think that's really cool, and I really appreciate you guys being tier 1 subs and everything like that, and I appreciate you guys being a part of the channel. So I have two options right now. I have the option to film a video that talks about how I've crashed on the Nürburgring. Everyone's going to click it, and it's going to push us over 50,000 subs. Or, as you guys hopefully would expect me to say, I can say screw that. We're going to talk about something that you guys have been asking about and is probably not going to get as much traction, and that's what we're going to do today. What I want to talk about is a little bit, a very small amount of my history in the automotive world. Where did I get my start, and why am I so damn into cars? If it has 4 wheels, 2 wheels, whatever, I like it. If it's a 3-wheeler, maybe not as much, but we'll talk about that later. The reality is that I would rather do this, and I would rather talk with you guys about it because it's something you're interested in, and I have more fun engaging with you guys than I do actually watching the number of subs go up, or the clicks or the likes or anything like that. But don't forget to like and sub. Let's get right to it. So growing up, my father was probably the single most influential person, probably, in my desire or love for cars, for motors, for anything that you could measure the horsepower in. I was all over it. He had from when I was a baby, I've got pictures of me sitting in his lap in 1,000 horsepower jet boats with, you know, blowers on the top that were cycling like crazy, and you couldn't even start it without you know, having air protection. I was you know, probably 3 years old, and I'd already been probably close to 100 miles an hour in a boat in Southern California and things like that. And that was obviously, as a kid, that's ingrained in you. And I think you can probably see that in Max and Annalise as well. They all they know is cars, and that's all they talk about. You know, obviously they like other things, but it's one of their big influences in their life. And so for me, growing up in my family, you were going to have something to do with cars just because that's what we were into. So I was around while my father was building some hot rods that he did. You know, now he's got 32 Ford Roadsters and different things like that. When I was young, I had a dream of building I think it was a 29 Model A Roadster, is one of the cars that I wanted to build. And obviously in a modern style. I didn't want to, you know, fix up an antique. I wanted to put a small block Chevy in it and do things like that. Actually, I wanted a Roadster pickup. That's what it was. And that was something that really kept me motivated as a kid. I hated school. I was very, very good at math, but I just couldn't bring myself to showing my work and doing the work. So I just dreaded going to math. I love talking. I love articulating and communicating, but I hated where I maybe would have to write a book report or do things like that. And so I never enjoyed school. And something that a lot of you ask me is, where did I study? Where did I do my further education? I didn't go to university because for me it just was something that I knew was going to be a waste of money. I have many people that I've watched over the years that have gone to school and come out of school and didn't have anywhere to go, didn't have a job in place and things like that. So for me, I knew, and that's one thing I'm very proud of, is that I didn't go because I can say I knew that it was going to be a disaster if I went, because I was going to skip it. I would never go. I probably would have failed out. So it's something that I didn't do, but I did start, like I said, working through, at a young age. I was working starting at 15 years old in my grandfather's tool and die shop. And that was a neat experience because he was very kind and gave me a 1989 Chevy Silverado, badass baby blue with a nice silver stripe down at the bottom. The thing was mint, except for it needed a new motor. So at 16 years old, I was down at Pep Boys knocking out a financing so I could get a new small block in my Chevy pickup truck. And it was really cool because I got the financing. I think I paid it back over like 4 years. And we got this new motor, and one of my colleagues from the tool and die shop let me take the car over to his house, and he basically put the motor in. I was useless. I tried it. I did what I could, but he spent 2 full days, and I helped putting the motor in. It was a really neat experience because that was the first car that I had, like I said, at the age of 16, where I needed to figure out how in the hell was I going to get a new motor in this car, because I was using that to get to school. I was using it to go out with friends. I was using it for anything that I needed to do. That was how I got around. And it was really special to me. It was a vehicle that I have a lot of really good memories in. And it was also neat because it was fun to see how you had to budget for it and struggle to keep this thing operating. But man, did it make me proud being able to be on my own and be able to go places and do things. And yeah, sure, we got in some trouble with it, but we had a lot of fun with it too. And that was my first car, and it moved on from there. It moved on to some pickup trucks. I had a GMC Sierra, which would be the Silverado version, but short bed, lowered them, put big wheels on them. I had one with American 5-spokes on it, and just tried to make some really cool cars. And eventually I was lured into the world of performance sports cars and things like that. And it started by, at this time I was working construction. It was very hard work. I was very lucky to get the job. I was working for my father at this time, building custom houses. And I was able to work my way into a position where I felt like I could have bought a car that might be a little bit more expensive. And what did I do? I went down and bought a C6 Corvette. It was a C6 Z51 pack Corvette, black car. And what did I do as a typical American? Okay, we always joke about Americans not being able to drive a manual transmission. What am I going to do? I've never driven one before. I'm buying a manual transmission car. So I go down there, I walk into the dealer, I say, I want that car. They're like, okay, you want that one? Yeah, we signed the deal. And what's cool is in the States, you buy a car today, you drive it home today. It's a little bit after 6 p.m. right now. If I wanted a car in the United States, I'll walk down to the dealer, I'll be driving that thing home in an hour. So I drove that thing home. Well, the problem was I'd never driven a manual transmission car before that. So I rolled out of that place teaching myself how to drive a manual transmission car. And by the time I got home, I knew how to drive a manual transmission car. It was quite the experience. The clutch was still intact amazingly. And it was a lot of fun, and it was a cool story. I've got a lot of stories from that car that I will share with you guys over the coming videos and different things like that, because I have a lot of fond memories about it. But what it did was it took me down a whole path that I never expected that I would go to. I decided that forums were getting big. The internet was really starting to take off in terms of carb modding and people talking about their cars and everything like that. I went to a shop and I said, I want headers, I want camshaft, I want some head work, I want intake work, and I want a complete tune on this car. I want this thing running, top notch. I had numbers in my mind what I wanted to do. So I drove that car. It was about a 6-hour drive to where I dropped it off. And then I waited maybe 2 weeks. I went back to pick it up, and you know what? I had nothing but problems with that. On the drive home, the car would just shut off. The ECU would go into limp mode. I'd have to shut the car off, restart it. At one point, the shop that did the work for me came back and actually had to bring the computer to reset the car when I was maybe an hour away. Honestly, it was a nightmare. It was really frustrating. It was really discouraging. But what I did was I went and I started doing research. I said, this damn car is going to work. It's going to run. And if my father was here, he'd tell you, he's laugh his ass off. He came over one day and he comes in the garage, and I've got this brand new car with maybe 2,000 miles on it, completely torn apart in my garage. He said, what the hell are you doing? I said, I'm trying to fix it. I'm going to make this thing work. And one thing led to another, and I got that car running. I ended up ordering the HP Tuners software. I bought a laptop so that I could do my own ECU mapping and everything like that. And sure enough, that car ended up running and it ran beautifully. I got mass airflow errors to go away. And I was at that point, because the car was brand new, I had, even with all the tuning shops in the country and all these different things, I had one of the first working cars with a big camshaft in it. And it was because I was determined to come home after work and spend 7, 8, 10 hours just coding and mapping and making errors and reverting, going on test drives and working on the tune and everything like that. And over time, that actually led me into getting a in-ground dyno. And I had a dyno. I had a shop that had a dyno in it, and I would do my programming, my mapping on there. It was a place that I rented, and it actually worked out really cool. And what evolved from that was something that if I knew today or if I knew then what I know today, can't we all say that hindsight's 2020 about business relationships, about maybe even money management and how to do things? It would be a much different scenario. It was something that a lot of people in the area realized, hey, you know what? Robert's dedicated to what he does. We're going to go to him. He's passionate about this and really enjoys it. And I built up something that I am quite proud of at that age and maturity level to have accomplished, to have a very good following and a very good group of people that we were doing mapping and engine builds and turbo installs and supercharger installs. I took my C6 Z51 Corvette and I had a 300 shot of nitrous on it that was coming in over 3 stages. I had it tuned to where I was making 510 horsepower out of a stock bottom end LS2 motor. With my own camshafts. So I had comp cams that was grinding my own camshafts. And I think I had 9 different camshafts. They ranged from the LS1 motors, LS2 motors, and then the LS7 motors with my own profiles and everything like that. And it was really, really cool. It was a lot of fun, and I learned so much about motors. I learned so much about mapping and about tuning that now today on the Nürburgring, I have a very good feel for what an engine is doing. I have a very good feel for how a car is working. With that, I was using my Corvettes as track cars, whether it be track day or autocross events. In the States, autocrossing is where you basically go out into a big lot and you set up cones and you set up different courses and you race around it. And it was really, really cool. It was a lot of fun. And that is what I learned in. I learned in powerful cars that I actually built myself. So that's how I learned about suspension tuning. That's how I learned about actually geometry changes and what they did. I learned about how different gear ratios affected real life applications. We rebuilt these cars day in and day out, and we're making changes to them so we could go next week and do more stuff with it. We got to the point where the shop was really fun. It was almost a social place, as you could imagine, similar to Apex. And maybe with a little bit less flair, if you would, a little bit less refined versus what Apex is. But we got to the point where we had people coming. The first Friday of the month was called Friday Night Dynos. And a lot of you guys a lot of people that were coming from these events are actually people that are probably watching this video and not commenting and not saying anything, because I have been getting a couple messages here and there. That was a really exciting part of my life. It was an exciting part for me to see. We had people that would come from 3-4 hours away on a Friday night. They would come down, groups of people from Oakland, groups of people from San Francisco, Central California, all over, and we did Friday Night Dynos. We'd have 200-300 cars in the parking lot lined up, or out in the cul-de-sac lined up. We'd be grilling out there. You'd throw your car on and you'd brag to your friends, I just put down 300 horsepower. You'd be busting on your other friend because he put an intake on that was going to make him 40, but he lost 5. You got the one buddy whose car was on the dyno and it was knocking the whole time. Knock is detonation. You can see the black puffs of smoke coming out the exhaust and everyone's just busting on him. And it was a damn good time. It was really a neat experience. And to be honest with you, it's something that I have toyed with, bringing the Friday night event back to Apex. I joke that I'm buying a dyno for Apex so we can do Friday Night Dynos at Apex, and you boys can come down from the UK. Some of you can swing over from France. I could show Fabson in Switzerland how much more power my E92 makes than his. You know, it really is a fun way to do something that isn't actually just driving, but it's just bringing like-minded people together. And that's one of the, like I said, we did a lot of work. I learned a lot of things, but I made tons of good relationships. And I think that was the most important part of that, was the relationships. But I hope that gives you guys a little bit of insight to a very small part of my history in terms of cars. This is literally just a little insight into cars. It has so many holes and so many things that we can talk about. But what it also leads to is a question you guys have been asking a lot, and that is my first track car, what should it be? Should I go with something like a GT3 RS, a GT2 RS, or should I get something more realistic? And I think this is a perfect time to cut it and say we're going to talk about exactly that tomorrow, because it does tie into this with me having learned in Corvettes and high-powered cars, and maybe cars that were a little bit more advanced than they should be. Maybe I didn't learn as quick as I could have. So let's talk about that tomorrow. One thing you guys can all do for me, because if you've made it this far, then I would say that you're some of the core viewers of the channel. Post below what you drive, what was your first car, and what was your first track car. I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say, and we'll catch you later.